The African Union 21st General Assembly, which brings together member heads of state and governments, has opened at the headquarters in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. The meeting is the climax of the week-long summit that has also seen Africa mark 50 years since the formation of the AU summit. Today's session has seen various leaders make keynote speeches, including Kenya's Uhuru Kenyatta, who's made his maiden address before the assembly. Leaders are expected to deliberate on various agendas ratified by the Executive Council. Key among the issues on Sunday is the AU's position on relations with the International Criminal Court. Now, as the African Union continues with its celebrations to mark its 50th anniversary, the birthday comes amid rising hopes of political recovery and stability in many warring African nations. The AU's peacekeeping mission in the Horn of Africa nation of Somalia presents the story of Africa finding African solutions and intervention to Africa's war-torn nations. Mohammed Hirmoge has the details.
African soldiers in a fierce confrontation with rebel fighters in an area close to the capital's presidential palace. Infantry platoons often braced an expected ambush to recover strategic towns and roads.
They are actually what stands between, the Somali government and lack of a Somali government. The Somali government would not exist without the African Union peacekeeping force in Somalia, because the Somali government does not have the strength and the capacity that is needed to stand on its ground.
As the African Union marks the 50th year since the founding of the continent's organization that spearheaded efforts to liberate Africa from its colonial masters, the African mission in Somalia is a success story. Though the peacekeeping mission is far from over in Somalia and the continent still grapples with the vagaries of terror and poverty, the case in Somalia is that of rising hope.
The Somalia case in the AU is probably one of the most successful interventions that the African Union has done anywhere in Africa in the last 50 years. And I think now they are actually thinking about replicating their efforts in Somalia, where you had few countries intervening in one of the most unstable places on the face of the planet, and essentially turning events to the positive.
Despite threats of guerrilla-style attacks looming large, the capital is at most stable and secure. The presence of the AU troops patrolling the streets of the capital attests to strengthening security in the capital.
There is no better place to celebrate this anniversary than here in Mogadishu. It is here where the African Union has done history. And I would like to focus specifically on the theme of peace and security, which is at the core of the African Union mandate. We have a broad partnership, of course, several of us, international partners with the AU, but it is here in Mogadishu, in this theme, where the African Union has really made a difference.
Somalia's second port of Kismayo was liberated by the Kenya Defense Forces 7 months ago, lending credence to the African mission's peacekeeping capacity. Now African leaders will seek to map out the next 50 years of political and economic integration. And even as they celebrate the Golden Jubilee, African leaders will merge the blueprint for Agenda 2063 for socio-economic and political transformation of the continent. Mohammed Hirmoge, CCTV, Mogadishu.
Now, as we'd mentioned earlier, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta made his inaugural speech on Sunday calling for Africa's leaders to promote intra-Africa trade and Pan-Africanism that were the ideals of Africa's founding fathers. CCTV's Beatrice Marshall spoken with the Kenyan president on the sidelines of the AU summit.
Your father, Kenya's founding father, Jomo Kenyatta, was one of the architects of the Organization of African Unity. Looking back 50 years, have the ideals of the founding fathers of African countries been achieved? Have those objectives been met?
I think I'd say they've partially been met. But I believe we still have a very long way to go, especially if we look at the point of view from the essence of the original charter was the independence, the liberation struggle. Yes, we have succeeded there. But in terms of some of the other issues, tackling poverty, tackling unemployment, equality, infrastructure development, prosperity for our people, I believe we still have very major challenges to overcome 50 years down the road.
At the time of independence of African countries, though, the driving force was liberation from colonialism, socio-economic development. What defines Africa today?
I think what defines Africa today is the fact that we have a resurgence in the feeling of our own, the feeling of unity. I felt that especially today when we were dealing with the youth, and the feeling that we need together to challenge our common problems, or to tackle our common problems. There is a deeper feeling that we need African solutions going forward. There's a deeper feeling of the need for integration, greater intra-Africa trade, greater movement amongst people within the African continent. I think there is a resurgence of that identity as Africa that was prevalent 50 years ago, but somehow we lost contact with that. And the need for us to begin to develop our resources and to make them work for Africans, as opposed to us being just a center of extraction and exploitation.
There is a feeling of a resurgence or a rebirth of Africa at the moment, though. Pan-Africanism is a very strong component of the AU 50-year celebrations, though. What is the significance of Pan-Africanism at this time when the world is more integrated? What is the significance, for instance, for Pan-Africanism for a country like Kenya?
I think the significance is the fact that we are beginning to understand that we have focused probably for far too long on feeling that solutions will come from the West. We have been feeling that our partnership should be more with Western or developed nations, as opposed to the fact of understanding that deeper integration, a deeper working understanding within the African continent is probably where our solutions lie. Both from a point of view of trade, as you know, today Kenya's biggest trading partner is Uganda, right? That one would not ordinarily recognize. Deepening that trade means that we have the capacity to expand our own manufacturing capacities. We have the capacity to be able to build on each other's strengths and tap this vibrant, growing, young population that is out there.
Now we'll have more for you just after the short break, including at least 5 people killed as security forces opened fire on protesters in Guinea.
Breaking news. Global trends. CCTV News brings you stories with the different aspects of Africa in the international content. With our reporters across Africa and all over the world, we'll tell you about the real Africa and how it impacts the world. AfricaLive, every day, only on CCTV News.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Let's move to Guinea, where at least 5 people have been killed when security forces opened fire on protesters in opposition strongholds in the capital, Conakry, on Saturday. The government has confirmed that since Thursday, 11 people have been killed in the violence that began over election preparations. One doctor says among the wounded are 2 girls between the ages of 6 and 8 who'd been hit by gunfire. Legislative elections set for June 30th are intended to complete Guinea's transition to civilian rule following a 2008 military coup. But the opposition accuses government of trying to rig the vote, while regional diplomats have struggled to get both sides to take part in talks.
At 2 p.m., there were armed policemen who shot him near his home. He had just left when a woman who had a son behind her dropped her baby while running. He went back to save the baby and the police shot at him.
When it comes to gold deposits, eastern Uganda's Busia district may be rich. However, the precious metal is being mined by those who are precisely the opposite. In fact, the majority of today's miners are underage school children who abandon their classes to engage in the risky business of artisan gold mining. This is to afford basic provisions both for themselves and their families. CCTV's Alan Chiro has more.
With a basin and a shovel, Ivan wades into the stream and starts digging. These rudimentary tools are his family's lifeline. He's engaging in the risky business of artisan gold mining to be able to afford basic provisions for both himself and his family. Working for more than 8 hours a day, it is a tiresome occupation, especially for an 11-year-old. But the outcome of earning up to $4 a day is far too satisfying for a boy's age. Ivan lives in Uganda's eastern district of Busia, where over 62% of the population lives on less than $1 a day.
It is hard when you are getting dirty gold. You first get the basin, you start working very hard. After that you get gold. And other times you cannot get. After giving us money we use for buying clothes. That times we use for just eating, buying shoes.
The World Bank regards this village in eastern Uganda as the biggest gold mine deposits in East and Central Africa. But there is nothing to show that Busia holds 52 square miles of gold. 16 kilometers west of the Kenyan border, it is a mere shadow of the immeasurable mineral wealth it holds. The people here wallow in abject poverty, hence forcing parents to let their children drop out of school in favor of the more lucrative mining.
You know, there when they go there, some can even get some money and they went to town, something like that, doesn't want to go to school, maybe when he has some 20,000 per day, so he doesn't mind about school.
Parents, however, blame the high dropout rate on schools charging high tuition fees, despite the fact that the Ugandan government offers free education programs. As a measure against the practice, Busia district authorities have implemented a fine of 50,000 Uganda shillings, about $20 for parents whose children are found working in the mines. Uganda's gold industry has seen radical increase in gold production. In 2005, gold made up to 9% of the country's exports according to Revenue Watch. In 2006, gold brought in $122 million. Gold appears to be widely distributed throughout Uganda, but it has been exploited by artisan miners in a few areas. When these miners strike gold, they can earn up to $100 a day, a pretty sum in a country where majority of the population lives under $1 a day. Alan Chiro, CCTV, Busia, Eastern Uganda.
It's time now for a short break, but when we come back, Bayern Munich beat Borussia Dortmund 2-1 to win the 2013 Champions League.
Africa, an amazing world, is coming closer to us. A new voice.
We have made an excellent beginning.
A new view. Let's watch together. We deliver news and views. Let's explore together. We get you inside real Africa. Every day, only on CCTV News.
I doubt whether he knows anything about corruption.
We love Kirak very much.
I'm a servant of the people. These people give me a mandate. I cannot be considered a colonialist because if I was a colonialist, I would have imposed myself on people.
People see him, he's out there and he's very vocal. People know he's trying his best.
Think, what's my business? Am I growing mushrooms? Am I raising chickens?
Ian Clark, African politician with a difference. Is he a new colonial master or a champion of the people?
People did say our Ugandan politicians have failed us. So let's try this guy.
Mission to Mend, the restless world of Ian Clark.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Now, before we go to sport, let's return to our top story this hour. We look at the African Union's 21st General Assembly, which has opened in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. Now, for more on that, we cross live to Robert Nagila, who's standing by in Addis Ababa as the AU marks 50 years since its formation. Robert. Robert, we're expecting to hear from Robert Nagila, who is standing by in Addis Ababa. Robert, are you available? We seem to have...
Well, the latest information coming from here, which we're getting from reports from the local media, is that the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, which basically covers the Horn of Africa, has now waded into this controversy regarding the ICC vis-a-vis the African continent. Now, we understand that yesterday, in a session in which Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni was sitting in, he's basically asking the ICC to tell them that, because he says that they have received reports that the ICC, I beg your pardon, intends to detain Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta once his trial begins. Now, he says that they're getting this information from a very credible source, and he wants that the ICC to come clean on this particular question. Now, Museveni basically says that if this is the case, then they will be asking Mr. Kenyatta not to attend the ICC case. Now, on the other side, looking at the General Assembly and events that are ongoing today, what we do know is that they will be voting on a draft proposal from the Executive Council. You will recall that the Executive Council sat on Friday, and of course, on the table, on the agenda, top on that agenda was the ICC question. Now, we do expect to vote on that proposal. Now, in short, just to give you a little snippets of what that proposal actually says, the African Union basically saying that they are hugely disappointed with the UN Security Council because they had put forward a request to have the cases of Sudan's President al-Bashir and Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta deferred. However, they've not received any response, and they say that they're very disappointed with that particular situation. As a result, they say that this particular indictment against Kenya's new leaders, that is Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto, will have a serious implication on security and stability of the whole of the African continent. They say that it will have an implication on the whole of the African continent, not just the Kenyan region itself. So we are, like I said, we are awaiting a vote on that. Now, one of the proposals or recommendations that they've put forward is the formation of another commission, an AU resolution commission, to look into this particular question, the ICC question vis-a-vis the African continent, because they say in 2010, one of the proposals that had come forward was that the ICC basically stay away from sitting presidents, and you know that the case against President al-Bashir of Sudan has been a sticking point for quite a few years now, and now this case of Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy. And it does appear that all African countries are coming together and giving support to the ICC suspects. That's apart from Botswana. This came out on Friday after the Executive Council had sat down. However, we do not expect any problems. This is a mere formality because in previous summits, anytime the Executive Council has put forward a proposal, it has basically been voted on and passed. So that's the latest we have. We expect that vote sometime today. If not, it will be tomorrow before the closing ceremony.
All right, thank you very much. Robert Nagila there with the latest on the AU's position on relations with the International Criminal Court. Now, we move to sport where Bayern Munich right-winger Arjen Robben's late goal helped his team drive the last nail in the coffin of fellow Germans Borussia Dortmund during the Champions League final at Wembley. Bayern won a pulsating all-Bundesliga, or all-German rather, encounter on Saturday when making their third appearance in the final of the Champions League. They'd previously lost to Inter Milan in 2010 and to Chelsea in 2012. This season, a poor start left Dortmund 12 points behind Bayern at the halfway mark in the Bundesliga, and the gap was more than double as Dortmund finished second and 25 points behind the eventual champions. Bayern Munich triumphed with a 2-1 final score.
We really fought to win the Champions League. Right now, we are the best team in Europe. Let's see if we can do it for years to come.
Normally, we want to play here against Chelsea to do the revenge, but we win it and we're so happy because last year was very sad and now we go to celebrate.
I think we train and focus on the game, and the first 20 minutes I think Dortmund was a better team, but then we come good back and yeah, then you see everyone fight for another guy, and at the end we have a little bit of luck and now we can celebrate.
Thousands of athletes joined victims of the Boston Marathon bombings to run and walk the last mile of the race on Saturday in Boston, reclaiming the triumph of crossing the finish line. Wazir Kamsin reports.
Thousands walked and ran Boston Marathon's final mile to honor bombing victims and reclaim the experience of finishing the race on Saturday morning. About 3,000 runners and bombing victims gathered in light rain to run the final mile of the world's oldest annual marathon.
I feel really good. I made it all the way, and it was a nice experience, so I'm grateful that we were given that chance.
On April 15th, explosions near the finish line killed 3 people and wounded more than 260. Before the race, a moment of silence was observed for the bombing victims, and the national anthem was sung by the choir from St. Anne Parish, where 80-year-old victim Martin Richards' family worshipped.
It's just unbelievable. The people of Boston, just unbelievable. All the love. Even you guys with the cameras. I just want to hug and kiss you all. I can't believe what's going on here. Whoa. Way bigger turnout than I expected.
The 1-mile run began at Kenmore Square and ended at the official finish line, where participants hugged and cheered. For many runners, it was also a chance to heal from the events of that harrowing day. Wazir Khamsin, CCTV.
Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni says the country will borrow about $300 million from various local funds next year to finance road infrastructure development. He says the East African nation must improve and expand its roads to meet rising demand from the economy and its fast-growing population. CCTV's Alan Chiro has this report.
Uganda is set to borrow $300 million next year from various local funds for road infrastructure development. The Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni said earlier this month. Whilst power generation and the oil sector have received bigger response from investors, the government has to provide guarantee for the roads and ask for terms that are favorable, because the loans can potentially become public debt and there is need to limit the indebtedness of the country. Over the last 4 years, the government has prioritized the road sector by increasing the roads budget to improve and expand its road infrastructure and creating a national road authority.
As an officer in charge of 21,000 kilometers of roads, only 3,500 kilometers of those are tarmac. So there is a need to increase our tarmac network coverage, all-weather roads. So government has prioritized about 2,000 kilometers of roads to be constructed in the next 5 years. Those roads are either associated with the oil industry, agriculture, or tourism. And those are the roads where we are seeking for funding.
The bulk of the Uganda roads are financed through bilateral loans from the World Bank, the Africa Development Bank ADB, Japanese government through JICA, its aid arm, and the UK Department for International Development, UKDFID.
The $300 million is only a fifth of the $1.5 billion the country needs to improve and expand its road infrastructure, mostly owing to a huge population increase.
The $1.5 billion is required to tarmac 19 priority roads financed under a contractor-facilitated finance scheme But while the country can borrow and pay back with an interest locally, it cannot borrow more because the payment burden on the budget would weigh down on the public. Uganda has also had a poor record in road maintenance, mainly because most of the funds are allocated to road constructions.
Whereas government of Uganda has done well on construction of new roads and the rehabilitation of some of them, we've not done well as far as funding road maintenance is concerned. And that is the biggest challenge we are facing now. Government may be spending about $800, $700 million every year on construction of new roads and rehabilitation, but only about $50 million is being spent on road maintenance.
This challenge could be solved with a road toll charge. Most of the planned new highways have toll stations where motorists are required to pay a small fee that will be allocated for maintenance. Roads like the Kampala-Entebbe Expressway and the Kampala-Jinja Expressway will pave the way for this new system of revenue collection. Alan Charo, CCTV, Uganda.
That's all from this edition of Africa Live. I'm Famida Miller. Thanks for watching.